Well, have a nice day. We're going to start today with the first chapter of the history of Croatia and its link with Western culture number one. This is my name. So let us start. Let's go on. I have to introduce my pet. Her name is Nana. She's going to help us in this voyage or traveling in time. First of all, we're going to describe very briefly Croatia. What is Croatia? Most of you listening this conversation, you already know what is Croatia, but some of you may don't. So we're going to talk about Croatia for a few minutes. Then we're going to include time from prehistory till the death of Alexander the Great. Let us start with Croatia. Croatia is a country in the center-south Europe. As you see in this map, the limits are on the north, Slovenia and Hungary, on the south, Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Adriatic Sea, also, and on the east, Serbia mostly and Montenegro. It has 56,610 square kilometers, and if you include the territorial sea, a little bit more, has more than 1,000 islands. And Croatia is sea, of course. Is the east, you see here the image of Rovinj, eastern coast, and then here you see the Dalmatian coast. But it's also mountains, as you can see here. These are the Dinaric or Dinaric Alps, and it's also plain. Here you have the Slavonian plain, you have the Drava River, which is the frontier between the Hungarian plain and the Croatian plain that is called Slavonia. Let us correct maybe two very common mistakes. One of them is to call Croatia one of the Eastern Europe countries. Nothing at all. The east of Europe is the Urals. It's Russia. As you can see, it's very far away from the east, and it's in the center, maybe a little bit western, but in the center is a Mediterranean country, so it's in the center-south of Europe. Another mistake is to call it not only an Eastern European country, but a Balkan country. You see, the Balkans are over here. The mountains are called the Dinaric Alps. It's a prolongation of the Alps. Here is the center of Croatia. If you want to see it maybe nearer, Croatia, this is the center of Croatia, and this is the meridional point of Croatia, which is Dubrovnik. It's far away from the Balkans. And if you consider the peninsula, you'll find that this is really the peninsula. It's Greece, maybe a little more, maybe Albania. But mostly you cannot say that Croatia is an Eastern European country. Neither you can say that it's a Balkanic country. From the statistical point of view, the population is less than 4 million people. Average number of children per woman in childbearing age is 1.4. Natality rate is 8.3. Mortality rate is 13.3. So the population is decreasing. The vegetative growth rate is negative. It's -5 per 1,000 inhabitants. Life expectancy at birth is 76.8 years. The in money ingress, it means 25,522 in 2024. Per capita means per inhabitant. And this over here in blue color is very, very important. Number of tourists per inhabitant during the 2025 was the 6 tourists for a Croatian inhabitant. That means comparing with other European countries, Spain, which is also a touristic country, had 1.8, France had 1.2, Italy 0.8, and so on. England 0.6, Germany 0.5. Currency is euro or euro. And what is very important is that this is important. So Croatia lives mostly on touristics. The Croatians are all around the world, but if you have less than 4 million in Croatia, you have a little bit more than 4 million outside the country. Here you see mostly on the USA, Canada, Australia, and in Latin America, mostly in Argentina and Chile. Let us talk then about the prehistory and the ancient history in this territory. Until, and we'll finish this chapter with the death of Alexander the Great. So we're going to travel from the most remote antiquity until the death of Alexander. Well, if we were in an anthropology course, should study about the Stone Age, which includes the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, or Neolithic with these differences. We're not going to talk long about this. And this is the Metal Age, only to describe very briefly and very simple how this is distributed for study. Now we have in Pula, very near Pula, the Sandalia Caves. Here has been found the evidence, maybe, the evidence of the oldest human existence in Europe. I say maybe because there are several museums, several settlements which say that they found the same thing. So we cannot be sure. But anyway, it is believed that it could be here. Here is the location of Pula. We're always that we are talking about something, we're going to include in the map where it is located. But the most important, maybe the most important of these sites is the Krapina man. This settlement is dating back more than 30,000 years. And I used to say that it was the most important of all the Neanderthal sites. But really, it also happens that there are several sites, several settlements that are very important. So let us say this one of the most important and not say that it's the best of all. It's very important because there's a big number of and a big preservation of the pieces. Here's the museum in Krapina, and Krapina is located at the north, very near the frontier of Slovenia. After analyzing the DNA of people, Spencer Wells, which is a very well-known genealogist, he arrives to a point that all humans descend from a single individual who lived in Africa about 60,000 years ago. And this demonstrates monogenism, and then rules out polygenism, which served as an argument for racist theories. Now, this should be the point where this human being, the first human being, began its traveling, because human being has always been travelers, and these are different sites. And you see, one of the last points is South America. Sorry. sorry, let us say, well, this is a very, like a scale where you can find from the most remote Ardi, famous Ardi, or maybe the famous um, Australopithecus. And then, since this, which is considered maybe the Homo erectus, is considered, or the erectus man, is considered almost very near the human being. This is the one Heidelberg, and then Neanderthal very near us. And when we're talking about Croatia, the man of Sandalia is a Heidelberg, and the man of Krapina is a Neanderthal. So they received these names because these are the local names in Croatia. Sandalia very near Pula, and Krapina on the north side. And finally, we arrive to the sapiens. And nowadays, we already know that there are ancestors like this antecessor in Atapuerca, Spain, very near Burgos in Spain. From the Neolithic period, then we have vessels, a lot of settlements. Most known are Danilo Bitinj, Var, and Budmir. But really, the entire country is a settlement. Everywhere our sites are anthropological works and settlements. I used to say that this is a mistake, but this is not a mistake. You see, there's the cheese. Why? Why I put the cheese in the prehistory? Well, Danilo Bitinj here, in Pokrovnik, you see this settlement, you see these vessels, and these vessels, according to a study published in PLOS ONE by Dr. Sarah McClear, these vessels produced the oldest cheese in the world, 7,200 years ago. Until now, until this work, the oldest cheese in the world was considered to be the one in Egypt, dating 3,000 years. This is the settlement, this is the location of Pokrovnik. And what about PLOS ONE? PLOS ONE, because for a person that doesn't know, he can believe this is a story. No, this is not a story. PLOS ONE is a scientific journal published by the Public Library of Science. That's why PLOS. All articles undergo a very rigorous peer review process, both in the intern and the extern study. PLOS ONE is the world's leading journal in terms of the number of articles published. It is the flagship of open access, which is a movement that advocates for free and open access to science. And here you have a note from the Florida University. When you look at the impact factors of all the biology journals indexed, PLOS Biology is ranked number 1 in the science subject category. And this is Sarah McClear, the author of this work. She's in charge of the Mediterranean Prehistory and Paleontology Laboratory, and she has a PhD in California University and a doctorate in Freiburg University in Germany. Here you have a note from the Smithsonian, which says traces of 7,200-year-old cheese found in Croatia. And here you have the National Geographic talking about Danilo Bitinj and Pokrovnik and saying the same thing. Other sites, other settlements, Lasin, 2,500 years before Christ, means 4,500 years from us. And Vucetl, very famous Vucetl, because they did wonderful jobs here in our work of art, which is going to be published in YouTube very nearly. We talk a lot about Vucetl, 2,500 before Christ, more or less same time than Lasin. And these are the places, Lasin and Vucetl. Well, civilization, Occidental civilization, is considered to be born in Uruk. Uruk is a place, is a Sumerian place. Sumeria is in Iraq, and here you see our Nana with dressed like an antique Sumerian. There's a difference between culture and civilization. Culture is what a group of persons are doing every day, how they live, how they sit, how they eat. Civilization is more than that. It's that and more. It considers also development of art and mostly living in cities. So the urban way of living. So this is civilization, and the first civilization was the Sumerian civilization. Sumerian also were the first ones in writing. This is the cuneiform writing, see, 3,500 years before Christ. And then they came the Egyptians, which have another type of writing, hieroglyphic writing. The only was a way through drawings. You can say that the king here was killing an enemy, and this is the effects of a war that the king of Egypt won, and the famous Nemours palette, 3,500 years before Christ, and 2,500 years before Christ, Stonehenge, which is mostly, even nowadays, mystery. Also, there's a lot of mystery in the construction of the pyramids, 2,300 before Christ. And here in Croatia, we have the Gradina. What's this? You should say, what's this? Well, Gradina is a very small town, very near the river Drava, which Professor Potrevicas, he and his team, have made a discovery. They discovered a colossal defensive structure dating from 1,200 years before Christ. Let us keep attention to this number. Discovered by the team, which that challenges all archaeological predictions about the prehistoric settlements of Slavonia. He's a former head of the department of the University of Zagreb in archaeology, and nowadays he's still a professor at the universities of Zagreb and Sarajevo. Here, the development of the cells, that we're going to see them in a while, came from 2 points. From Hallstatt, nowadays Austria, between 1,200 and 450 before Christ, and Latin, nowadays Switzerland, the second generation, and this from 450 to 50 before Christ. Well, from these points, the cells traveled to Ireland, to Spain, and to Turkey this way. We're going to see in a few images. Here is Hallstatt, here is Latin, and now we have Gradina. What's this? What is this Gradina? Well, in a region where prehistoric fortifications were common, but they were built wood or earth. Finding stone a fortress built in 3 levels is very, very rare. This demonstrates a high degree of sophistication. Who were these people that made this incredible job at Gradina? We still don't know, but we may know within a while. This choice of stone at this time suggests a capacity far beyond what was previously thought. Here you have Professor Petrovica, he himself, partly of his team here, is in a job that have just begun, but that promises a lot. Let us go back. Promises a lot because who were these people? Were they another cells? Was another group of cells? Or they came from Hallstatt? Or they were Illyrians, they were Proto-Illyrians, the most antique Illyrians in the zone? Well, that's to be found, still to be found, but very interesting finding. If we travel all around, come to America, we're going to find these natives that we know, the Olmecs. We know very few of them. In the same time, you see, 1,200 till 400 before Christ. And here you have these giant structures or sculptures that nobody knows what they were for. It's very little known about the Olmecs. But this is the time. At the same time that was happening in Europe, this was happening in America. And we arrived to the Illyrians. Here we have Nan again, dressed like an Illyrian, and we have here the Proto-Illyrians, you see, the first Illyrians. And these were considered to arrive to all this region from 1,600 to 100. So that's why we could believe that these Proto-Illyrians were the builders of Gradina. Very interesting, because they were not supposed to be such a developed people, a tribes. They were supposed to be not in such a condition to build that construction we saw a few photographs ago. The Illyrian tribes were a lot, mostly famous the Istri, the Dalmati, and the Liburni, but they were settled already in the 8th century before Christ. Why I say there were a lot of them? You see, every point of this shows one tribe. So you can see, this was not a very united people, but they were all with the same characteristics. Then we go back to the Celtics. The Celtics, as I told you, were coming from Hallstatt and Latin, and they traveled far beyond to Ireland, far to Galicia in Spain, and they went also, they arrived to Turkey. And here in the region of Croatia, they entered following the Danube River, because when people travel, they always seek for water. And here you see, especially the basin Danube. Basin Danube, in this region, are the rivers Drava, Sava, and Drina, very important rivers in the history of Croatia. So they came from Latin, here, they came this way, and you see, they arrived here to the coast. The Japots was another of the tribes. The Japots are considered an Illyrian tribe, but when you study DNA of some of the Japots, you found out that they were mostly Celts. And here the Liburni were already a mix. The Liburni were already a mix of Illyrian and Celt people. As you can see in construction, you see the field shelter here in Istria, in Vonjan, very famous Vonjan because of the olive oil. And here you see a Celtic construction in Ireland, looks very much the same, and you see the same work in Galicia in Spain. So this already there were peoples that they had a lot of things in common, and they traveled all Europe, all continental Europe. Here this region, Croatian region, was the development of this Kordishi. And here, in the region of Sirmia, we can find Celtic pre-coins. Some people talk about proto-coins. Well, proto-coins or pre-coins means before the coins. between the 5th and the 3rd century before Christ. You see all these. This looks like a little bell, and these are round structures. Then they began to do another work on it, artistic job, and finally they developed a coin that looked like the Greek coin. They were made in bronze or fleece. The ancient Greeks then arrived. Greek and Celtic invasions. Celtics and Greeks, they met one each other with the Illyrians. And then you have the Celtics imitating the Greek coin, the antique Greek coin. Here you see a tetradrach made by the Celtics in the west, south and west of the Danube. This is a present-day northern Croatia. This worked, made in the 3rd century before Christ. Look at it. Look the difference between the Greek coin. The Greek coin was no doubt, from an artistic point of view, a better coin. But the Celts began to work and developed their own art. Nowadays, this kind of art is considered a Celtic art. You see how they did the horse. When you see that, you know already this is Celtic. So we're coming again to the Greeks. The Greeks, they began to colonize all this known world, especially around the Mediterranean. And in the Adriatic, you see here you have the islands in Dalmatia, and you have this point here, and also these islands over here, well colonized by the Greeks. Here you see in this picture, maybe you see, this island was left away, and here they should be blue because they were already Greek centers. We arrived to the Golden Fleece, the known mythology story of the Golden Fleece. And this is related to Croatia also. It is related, no doubt, to Greece. It is related to the Black Sea, but also to Croatia. We'll see why. This is a myth, frequently depicted in many interpretations. Here there's a sculpture, and you see here Jason with the golden fleece. Many of these interpretations are deeply complex and esoteric. It's very difficult to interpret a very old myth like this. One of the most widespread interpretations is that recounts the Greek invasions from the 13th century before Christ, long before the alphabet existed. So it was described in a way of a story from generation to generation. According to this, Jason and Medea, they escaped with the golden fleece, which they had stolen, and we'll show it in a map, rested in a bay, and founded Polai, modern-day Pula. Absirtides, Medea's brother, she was also a princess, she was the daughter. They were daughter and son of the king, pursued them, and she managed to trick him, and they killed him. They killed him and dismembered him, and his parts were thrown into the sea, becoming the archipelago Absirtides, made up of the islands of Kres, Kirk, Losing, and others, now very tourist places. According to a recent study by Oxford University, Pula is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Europe. Here you see, this is a crater from Apulia, which shows the Golden Fleece over here. Here's also a sculptured work by Pietro Francavilla in Florence, Jason with the Golden Fleece. Here's a painting of an Englishman painter. Medea throwing Absirtides into the sea. Of course, he's not dismembered here. He's a famous painter. And this is, until now, you have a lot of plays that interpretates this story. This is Medea. This is Medea the witch. And this was made between this sculpture, between 6 years. And this one, they're still nowadays interpreting plays with this story. What was this story? Well, Jason had to recover his throne. He had to go to the Colchid here, Colquida in Spanish, Colchid, and to steal the golden fleece. But the golden fleece was kept away from all possibility of stealing it by a dragon. But when Jason arrived, he met the princess Medea, which was also a witch, and gave something to drink to the dragon, and the dragon fell asleep. So they could steal it and go away. They went away in this direction, the red arrow here, and they were followed by the prince, by the other son of the king of the Colchid. They came all this way. According to the story, they went inside the Adriatic, and they knew about the geography. Here they had nowhere to go, and they found over here a very interesting place in Istria, because it was a bay over here, Siberia Bay, that during history has been always a military port. And over there they went inside, and they waited for Absirtides. They killed Absirtides, throw it to the sea, and according to the myth, Kirk, Cres, and Losing are the rests of Absirtides. Here you have the same drawing showing the Cres Island, and here you have a photo of Cres. Well, not only the Greeks, not only the Celts or the Lydians, also the Phoenicians, but the Phoenicians didn't get to Croatia. The Croatians were in the south, mostly in the south, and the west of Europe. So they didn't arrive, as far as we know, to the Adriatic zone. But they brought the alphabet to Europe. The first alphabet that arrived was the Phoenician alphabet. And the Greeks transformed that alphabet into the Greek alphabet in the 10th century before Christ. From that moment, we can call that history begins. History begins with the writings. But in the 5th century before Christ, in the golden age of Greek development, we call already historiography. Not only history. It's not only writing what happened, but it's a study of how history is written, and the study of the critical and scientific causes. So, difference between history and historiography. Historiography is born then, I repeat, in the golden age of the ancient Greece, in the 5th century before Christ. This is the century that Greek people gave the world very famous persons. In sculpture, we could know them, Phidias and Polycritus. In literature, history, philosophy, in everything, in every field of the human development. The 5th century before Christ was definitely Greek. While Greece was expanding, a giant lurked. This giant was the Achaemenid Empire. Sorry, I'm coughing a lot, sorry. Between the 5th and the 4th century before Christ, here's the map that shows how big this empire was. It was impossible not to get into war. The Persians were trying to get and to conquer Greece. They tried in the first Greco-Persian War, and they lost in the Battle of Marathon. Darius the Great, lost the first war, but then Xerxes III came once again. He won the Thermopylae battle, but then they arrived directly to Athens, and they couldn't do anything else. They needed support. They needed logistical support. And the logistical support was coming by sea. And the Greeks already had developed a very important fleet. So in Salamis battle, they destroyed the Persian fleet. And then the Persians had to run away. They couldn't leave. They didn't have any support. And running away they were even once again destroyed in the Plataea battle in the 479 before Christ. This is very important, and even if it is not Croatia, this is very important because this means what is going to happen in all these places. You see, here is Macedonia, here is Illyria. Illyria is very near all the situation, and here is the Croatian territory. The Greek invasions, as I was telling, developed at least in coins, really works of art, beautiful works of art, like this decadrama of Syracuse in the 14th century before Christ, but also in the Adriatic. In the Adriatic, they had also the commerce, and this is a coin of 18 millimeters. Maybe it is made to Heracles, to Hercules, and you see here the arms of Hercules, and he says Heraclea. There are different places with this name Heraclea, but this is believed that is in Dalmatia. And here you have the Dalmatian drachm, already a silver piece of 16 millimeters, very difficult piece, which shows here Zeus and here a goat. Goat because a goat is an expression of the region. All the coasts in the region have a lot of goats, and see here it's an emblem of Istria. Istria has a goat, and the goat that you see here 4,000 years ago, 2,600 years ago, it was the same one, the same goat. Here's the island where those coins were produced, were mint, in the island of Var. Very possibly they came from Syracuse. They came from the artistic worlds but also there's another theory that they not only that they could come from Syracuse, but they came from Corfu, because Corfu was known in those times like Corcyra, and Corcyra, our Corcyra, is made. This name comes from Corcyra, and 4 degrees they called Corcyra to Corfu, and they renamed Corcyra as Corcyra Melania, means black Corcyra. Melania, and all the Romans also said Corcyra Nigra. So it's because of the earth was a black earth compared to this land, and they called Corcyra Nigra or Corcyra Melania or black Corcyra. Here are the locations. See? Here's the island of Vis, in those days Isa. Here is Var, here is Braz, here is Cres. And what about Istria? What about the Golden Fleece? Is that something that was only a myth and only a story? Well, there's nothing. There's not too much, there's not too much to be found in Istria that supports the theory. of the golden fleece. But there's something. There have been found a lot of coins, and coins from the 16th century before Christ, from the archaic period. Why we know that these coins are from the archaic period? Because in the Salamis battle, 48 before Christ, 480 before Christ, when the Greeks won that battle, they could put here the moon. And the previous to the 480 before Christ, they were made without this moon here. So these coins at least demonstrates that the region, that bay, that Poli that they founded, or the actual Pula, was a commerce place where the Greeks used to commerce with the people that lived inside. Means the Illyrian, means the Celts. So this brings that the Illyrians were mixed with Celts and Greeks, and they learned a lot of things from the Celts, a lot of things from the Greeks, but also the Greeks that were conquering all these places. The Illyrians also conquered. They went to the south, and then imagine the Macedonians. They were going to be very important people. They were able to defeat the Macedonians and to conquer a very important place called Damastion. But then we arrive to the moment of Alexander the Great, son of Philip II. He decided he had, from the time that the Persians invaded, and I was telling you about the Battle of Thermopylae, about Darius the Great a very few minutes ago. So he had a dream to conquer all the Persian Empire, which he did. So he didn't go to the north, he went to the south and to the east. But this great empire he founded was going to end very, very soon. As soon as he died, all his generals, they are called the diadoques, they divided the empire in a lot of places and began to fight one with the other. They began to fight, and very slowly they were going to destroy all the work that they did with Alexander. This makes we finish what I was telling you, and we're going to see one each other in the second chapter. Soon we're going to have it in English also. Sorry if I did mistakes. I tried to do my best. Thank you very much. If you like it, please give a like. Please try to subscribe. So we'll see one each other in a few weeks to the second chapter in English. We already have the 7 chapters published, but in Spanish. Thank you very much for listening.